curious, the TechSmart program that you have developed that you said relates to the program in Malta. Is our TechSmart program one to prepare the kids for the Malta program, or is ours in lieu of the Malta program to give our kids that opportunity here without having to go to Malta?
That would be the latter, definitely. Yeah, what we're trying to do there is give them exposure to all those energy systems. I mean, we could never replicate that here. I mean, if you go to that facility, it's just a crazy amount of money that was spent down there on that. And it's a great program, but as we like to say, it's kind of a niche program for students that want to go in that direction. And it's hard to compete with that, the lure of getting college credit like that. And that's one of the reasons why we're looking at an ACC connection. But yeah, it's in lieu of, it's for students that are staying here in our program and giving them access to that curriculum.
All right, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Rosemary?
I just want to say that Lake George is so incredibly fortunate to have that technology program that you've developed for us. Our students are well prepared. Our engineering, our technology students are well prepared when they're off to college. I can speak to that firsthand. And, it's just so impressive what you do with the kids in that department. And thank you very much for everything and being so enthusiastic also. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Katie?
I was really excited to see the adaptation of the space and furniture. It's exciting for the innovative learning environments, and it'll be fun when you get to actually use it the way that you. But it's great to see that, and I just want to give a shout out to the VEX robotics team, which is really in its infancy, being only 4 years old, and I've gotten to see firsthand just the growth of the team and the commitment that y'all put into that. So thank you for offering that to the kids, in addition to all the required curriculum and choices that they have beyond the requirements.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the nod to all the standards in the cross-curricular pieces that your program hit. And I can also speak from personal experience, echo Katie and Rosemary. My own son gained so much inspiration here. He is now successfully in his third year at SUNY New Paltz studying graphic design and digital fabrication, in large part to the inspiration that you all gave him. So I love to see that continuing and so robust here. It's certainly something we're so very proud of. One of the questions that I have is, are we paying any attention to, or have we seen any increase in girls getting involved in technology and drawing them into these programs?
I can speak for the robotics team and the classes and design and drawing. I would say yes. We went from I think the first year we had 5 girls. Now on the robotics team, that is. Now we're up to we're 8, and then we have additional young engineers in programming robotics class too. So as far as CAD and design and drawing and independent studies, absolutely.
Yeah, and technology club is primarily all girls.
Yep.
I didn't hear that last comment.
Our technology club is primarily all girls.
Oh wow.
Believe that.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, I had a CAD.
That's great.
I had a CAD class that had that was mostly girls too. It had 2 guys in there. So yeah, I would echo what Mr. Strobel is saying. And I will tell you that the new digs down here is definitely going to help.
Sure. That's marvelous. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you so much for your presentation tonight, and thank you so much for your commitment. It was certainly apparent when you showed on the screen not only what you're doing, you know, during the school day, but beyond the school day with the clubs and the coaching and all of that. So thank you so much for your commitment. Know that you are extremely valued here at George. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have our non-instructional budget by Mike.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight our non-instructional budget. This is the first of 3 budget presentations to be given over the next few board meetings. As is always the case, no matter what the budget presentation is, when we're budgeting, we're focusing on some overarching goals. Foremost, our mission on the left. We want to put forth a top-notch educational program to develop leaders, lifelong learners, and global citizens. As we're putting that together, we have to keep 3 key things in mind. We want to make sure our programs and services align to our strategic plan, and we want to align to the myriad of mandates that we're subject to as educators. We want to make sure these are safe, our staff are trained, and we want to make sure our budget is sustainable. Make no mistake about it, when we're budgeting, we're not just budgeting for next year, we're actually budgeting for many years down the road, so we don't get ourselves into a jam. And most importantly, we want to put forth a program for kids that is innovative and engaging, something that jazzes them up and makes them want to be in school, just like you just saw with that presentation before. This is a summary of our non-instructional budget. When we're talking in the detail, the line-by-line detail is attached. You can see the blue link there, and that'll also be on the webpage tomorrow. When we're talking about non-instructional, we're talking about 4. The first is you folks, the Board of Education. You know, what supply, what contractual services, BOCES and non-BOCES, what are the things that you need to fulfill your role as board members? That is included in the budget. As part of that, the district clerk salary is in that line item. Administrative services are salary, supplies, and contractual services for the superintendent's office as well as the business office. In addition to that, our legal services, our auditing services, our tax collector, our public information services, that's all included in that line item. Operations and maintenance, our buildings and grounds department. You know, I've often referred to this as a pretty boring budget. There's nothing that sticks out in terms of large ticket items that we're budgeting for. It's pretty much the run-of-the-mill things that we're doing from year to year. You know, we budget a lot of money to keep things like our carpets looking good and things like that. But nothing in terms of operations and maintenance, no huge pieces of equipment or anything like that in this year's budget. Transportation, the same thing, but the only thing additional that we need to get is a new van. Actually, we need to get multiple vans. We purchased vans at the same time after the hailstorm back in 2012. So we have a group of vans that are now getting in excess of 150,000 miles on them. So we're actually going to purchase one in this year with this current budget, but we're budgeting for one next year. And there's 4 or 5 of them, 4 or 5 vans that we need to make sure that we replace in the next few years. We do that all under state contract, yes. So that's really the only one that has kind of a spike, you know, more so than the others, with the overall budget to budget of 2.9%. for the non-instructional budget. And as is always the case, also this is tentative. You know, as things evolve, you know, state aid isn't finalized, working on other components of the budget. It would not be uncommon for something on here to potentially change when we get to that final budget presentation later on. In terms of the big picture, what we're talking about when we talk about the non-instructional budget is 14% of our overall budget. Okay. The next budget presentation will be the instructional budget, which is where most of our resources are committed. That will be 52%. And then the final budget presentation will be the undistributed, which is basically benefits and debt service. We are proposing to borrow and buy a bus. We actually lost a bus due to an engine fire in the year, and we surplused 2 older buses. So we've reduced the size of the fleet, but in keeping with our 10-year plan to continuously upgrade the buses and make sure we have well-operating buses, we are looking to buy an additional bus. I hate talking about this because I know it'll all change, but I would feel bad if I didn't just tell you where we're at right now. So the governor's budget proposal was quite unique. And there were some wrinkles put in there that have never been put in there before. The first thing is foundation aid has been frozen. It's actually been frozen for a couple of years now. So what you see there for foundation aid of a little over $1.5 million is actually going back to 1920. We haven't really had any significant increase at all in a couple of years. The governor is also trying to consolidate expense-based aids, something that he's tried to do for many years, and it usually doesn't make it through the legislature. So when you look at the chart on the right for the line item that says services, $689,419, last year, that would have been made up of a number of different things, like BOCES aid, transportation aid, software, and various items, where we get a percentage based on what we spent. He's saying, let's put that all into one pool of money, and then it'll be tied to a growth rate going forward, which has not been identified. But it will not be expense-based. That's very problematic, especially for a small school like a small district like George that relies very heavily on BOCES. For a couple reasons. You know, BOCES allows us to get some really good services without having to hire our own people, and there's a cost savings in that. But there's also some budgeting certainty, knowing that however much we spend on budget, however much we on BOCES services, we're going to get 30% of that back as BOCES aid. If this goes away, we would not have that certainty, and I would really worry about what would happen to our BOCES programs across the state if this actually went forward. The local district funding adjustment, the governor is considering the STAR payment as state aid this year, which has never been done before. That's really more relief on people's property taxes. We levy for the full amount. Some individuals that receive STAR help don't have to pay the full amount, and we are reimbursed by the state. He's including that reimbursement as part of state aid. The local district adjustment is the lesser of state aid or the COVID-19 stimulus. In our case, the lesser amount is the STAR payment, so the local district adjustment is $348,000. And on the bottom, the COVID-19 stimulus refers to the $900 billion package that was passed in December. Okay? If you compared last year's state aid to this year, the state has actually cut aid for everybody, but the state is backfilling that with federal money. Okay? And that's very problematic on the road, you know, many years, because it would be very hard for the state to make up that percentage. Another thing that you have to keep in mind when you look at this is the whole package is predicated, meaning the amount that he's saying we're going to get for foundation, services aid, and on down the line. The whole package is predicated getting an additional $6 billion to New York State from what President Biden is trying to secure for funding with his rescue package. We don't know if that's going to happen or not, okay? So that's why I say I don't put too much stock in a lot of this. I think it's all going to change quite a bit. Something else to pay your attention to, there are two things that are going on here. If you just look at the direction of the line, that are having a significant impact on what we're allowed to levy as taxes. The tax growth factor in Lake George just took the biggest dip that it had in quite some time, and was about 0.4%. And that doesn't sound like much, but that, as part of the tax cap, that 0.4% is multiplied by our entire tax levy, which is over $20 million. So what that means is that's about an $80,000 downward push on what we can ask our taxpayers for as additional money to fund our budget next year. On the right, the tax cap was 1.81% last year. It's going to be 1.3% this year. Again, downward pressure on what we can go out as a tax levy. So the best way to look at it is last year we could go out with a maximum tax levy of over $400,000. This year we can go out with a maximum tax levy of just over $200,000. Okay, so it has, although they're really small numbers, they have a significant impact on what we can ask our taxpayers for to support the budget. And finally, I just wanted to draw your attention to the schedule coming up. Hopefully I haven't messed up any of the dates and times. On March 9th will be the instructional budget. April 13th will be the undistributed and revenues budget. May 4th will be the budget hearing and the vote on May 18th. Does anybody have any questions?
Where? That's money. Where does food services fall in this?
Food service is a self-sustaining activity. It's not really part of the budget.
Okay, and so paid for by the, how does it become self-sustaining and not part of the budget?
Paid for by students and adults paying for their lunch, and what we get reimbursed from the state and federal government as part of the National Food Meal Program.
Okay, so when we was down and we were offering meals, that was from the state aid that was funding all of that.
That's again should be from our self-sustaining food
Right.
service, although not very self-sustaining during the COVID shutdown.
Right.
So what happens is we have to transfer money from the general fund
Okay.
to supplement.
Okay, but for the most part, it balances itself out.
Yes.
Okay.
We usually budget, and you'll see that in the third budget presentation when we talk about undistributed,
Mhm.
where we have transfers from fund to fund. Usually we budget having to supplement the cafeteria by about $30,000.
Okay, very good. And that would come out of,
That would come out of the general fund.
okay,
Yes.
great, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Excellent.
right,
Mike,
thank
thank
you.
you very much for putting all this together. Appreciate it. All right, next up, we have our elementary update. Mr. Conway.
And I just wanted to add a little bit to their presentation. Jeff Bizon is not a member per se of the technology department. He is an teacher, but he teaches our STEM classes at the elementary school. The large majority of his day is doing that, and is instrumental in all of those clubs that they mentioned. So again, he is an elementary school teacher, but he oversees the elementary school program following what Robin Weber, when she was there, laid the groundwork for. So I think that's an important piece for everybody to be aware of. I will continue to say this at every meeting. I want to thank our staff, our students, our families for the ongoing work that people are doing to keep everybody safe in the school. We have no positive cases of COVID, and we have one student that is quarantining due to a possible contact. And that's it. That's pretty amazing. And so we're following that very closely. And again, it's a team effort to make sure that we have our kids in school each and every day. So in the spring of 2018, 2019, we had a group of students, our young scholar, taught by Bridget Crossman, Dante Saletti, and Jeff Bizon. And these kids had a project, and if you remember, it was our story walk. And there was a grand opening of that story walk, and it was in the newspapers and whatnot. And the New York State School Boards recognized that accomplishment, and they've been in contact for quite some time with Sarah, and we were trying to arrange something. It's quite some time after that, I don't know, a year and a half. But today, share this with you. It's Champions of Change for Kids, Lake George Central School District Board of Education, Nature Trail Story book pages. So, yeah. So, most of the kids are in this building now, but there are some students that are still in the elementary school. We'll get a photo op with those kids along with Bridget Crossman tomorrow, and if we can do it when Dante's there as well, maybe we'll Photoshop Jeff in there. But we will get something out. It's a long time coming for that.
Do you know where the banner will live?
I don't know yet.
Uh-huh.
We'll let the kids decide. We'll find a spot that makes sense to them. But tomorrow, our elementary school math night, and this year, as with most events, we've had to shift gears a little bit because we can't have large groups gathering. So this year, we're sending home bingo boards. And our teachers created different activities for different grade levels that kids can do with families. And one of the things that we do at our math night usually is that the kids and families participate in activities and they win prizes, and it's just kind of a fun hour of time that families will spend together. So this year it's at home. The kids fill out, it's not bingo, it's tic-tac-toe, 3 in a row. Tic-tac-toe board, 3 activities that might take 10, 15 minutes each. And they bring that in and they're entered for prizes. So we're just continuing to try to get creative and not lose some of the traditions that we have, but some of them are looking different. So today, actually, we were working on planning for our Parents as Reading Partners, what that will look like, and then our social studies fair later in the year. And we have to get creative because it won't be everybody in the gym with their projects. One of the ongoing focuses at the elementary school and in the district is digital citizenship and safety. And every year we have students outside of school that are on devices at an earlier age and sometimes unsupervised. And we have to do a really good job of making sure that we're teaching kids how to be safe and how to be kind, whether they're in person or whether they're virtual. So working with Megan and others in the district, and I thank Megan for the work that she's done helping to organize and support how we're addressing this. We have a few things that are coming up. First, on Tuesday, February 23rd, a social media expert, I guess, an educator, a presenter, Chris Vollum, going to be providing virtual presentations to our 4th through 6th grade students during the day. And his focus is teaching students about life online, focusing on digital leadership, quality screen time, balance, wellness, reducing anxiety or stress online, which is a big thing. It's a real big thing that kids, at home spending all this time online and can kind of get absorbed into that world. It's not healthy. So he's going to address some of those things. And in the evening, he's going to be presenting to our parents at 7 o'clock on the 23rd. And I'll be able to with you. We don't have that yet, but we'll put it in our bulletin. I don't know, maybe be able to send that out if some of you are interested in joining. In conjunction with that, the same week, we're providing virtual programs for our students in grades K through 3. And this is done through a puppet show, actually from the Puppets in Education program. And the cost of that is being subsidized or covered by Maltby Chevrolet. here in Lake George. So we want to thank them for that. So on Wednesday and Thursday, the 24th and 25th, virtual presentations, again, the puppet shows focusing on being kind, whether online or in person, as well as strategies to use if something doesn't seem right or somebody's not being kind, knowing who a trusted adult is to help you manage those situations, and then a focus on mental health. So I think they're, we're for our kids, and, I thank Megan again for that partnership and making sure we're meeting those needs of our students. That's all that I've got. Any questions about anything?
Jim, thank you so very much, and what an honor it is to be recognized for the shorter walk and all of the innovative work that's going on. Thank you for helping Lake George shine with programs like that. Really
thank
is so flattering for all of us, and that's that hard work. And I know how much of that was student-centered too, which is exciting.
The students and the three good leaders kind of steering them in the right direction. So thank you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
All right. And next up, we have Mr. Kokoza with the secondary update.
Hi, good evening. I have three brief things. Again, very incredible what our high school and district has been able to do since reopening back in September. As I spoke at the last meeting, everyone in the building, students and staff alike, have had to retool everything that they do. One contemporary example is if you check out our website, our FBLA, led by Karen Breslin and Brenda Hoffman, did the first ever virtual FBLA spring district meeting that was held on January 26th, and some folks participated, and we appreciated their support. So check out our article on the school website about what our FBLA was able to do. Second is just a reminder, you should have received in your mail a beautiful little blue card from our Scholarship Association. And if you have not had the opportunity to fill that card out and mail it back with a pledge, we ask that you do that. The phone-a-thon was done much differently this year than in previous years, and the Scholarship Association did mail out all of those cards to last year's donors based on the list. Our seniors are still going to need those scholarship dollars this June. So if you haven't done that yet, please fill it out. If you know somebody that's interested in donating, go to our website, click on community, and it's right there, Lake George Scholarship Association, and you can donate online. And we would really appreciate that, and I know our seniors will as well. And finally, third and final, important, is you can join us all in congratulating the Lake George High School 2021 senior class, the honors group, which is the top 10% of this graduating senior class. This year's senior class has 65 students in it, so that means the honor class has 7 in it. There are 7 individuals, incredible individuals, that make up the senior honor class. This honor group will work with me in the coming months to plan, organize, facilitate, execute, put together, however you want to say it, our graduation ceremony, which I'm thinking is right again, which
I don't know.
who would have thought? Who knows? But they'll be working directly with me and some other high school folks on putting together our graduation ceremony coming this June. So I'm going to list them in alphabetical order. Madeline Biles, Carson Bruning, Demi Burns, Alice Fox, Madeline Gorey, Rachel Jager, and Elizabeth Radin. So we want to congratulate this year's senior class honors group on that accomplishment. And to all those proud moms and dads out there, congratulations.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Appreciate that. All right. Any questions, Mr. Kokoza? We're good. All right. Thank you very much. Next up, we have our superintendent's report with Ms. Redneck.
Okay. I would like to start by thanking the PTSO and the students and faculty staff and Mr. Conway for their amazing gift to our transportation department. They surprised them recently with cards, breakfast, and if you could see the pictures, I think I sent them on to the Board of Education. That was just amazing. So great job bringing out our values in time where things can be a little stressed. I'd also like to thank the families and the students, faculty, staff, admin team, and leadership team for a wonderful and productive and positive PD day that was tapped onto our pivot day, just to practice our remote. Just talk a little bit about our purpose. So we outlined that we really, on the professional development day, wanted to talk about and tighten up some of our safety decisions and talk about protocols. We also used that day to, and I really appreciate what the work of the principals and Megan, who supported the breakout groups, to talk about quality instruction and some of the struggles we're having with teaching remote and in person. And that really led, in my opinion, from my perspective, to a very collaborative, open sharing of ideas and also being part of some of the solutions. So just kudos to everyone around that. We have since moved forward with the safety committee. And Mike, thank you for your leadership and facilitation in that. We created a decision matrix, and that really has led to a daily update of our COVID numbers, which include folks who are out for testing, folks who are tested positive or quarantine. You can go to our website now, and we have that right on our COVID page, as well as, and thank you to Tricia Biles, who asked that we also indicate our daily risk factor, if we are a low risk, a moderate risk, or a high risk. And right now we are low, which is we take the school numbers and we take the community spread, and then we put that together. So the safety committee, with Mike's leadership, we're able to move forward with that. We also move forward and announce some more remote days to help our teachers and our TAs who are looking really for some more collaboration. And we've announced those so that we make sure that people can be prepared. And I'm just trying to think what else we did there. Remote days. Oh, and Megan has just recently shared out the short-term virtual clarification and expectations one last time for some feedback, and we'll be sharing those out for short-term pivot situations. And we'll get some feedback and we'll share that out with folks. So thank you for a very productive and positive 2 days. When we were here last month, I had made that recommendation that we pivot out, and then we got together with the administrative group and made the decision to tack on the PD day with the remote day, and it worked out beautifully to continue to support our goal day in person in school. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, the junior, senior high school student support structure update. Tricia Biles and Marianne McKenzie and I met recently, and you had asked for an update. I think it was a couple months ago, and we decided to push that off till, not push it off, but really just allow people to prepare to update you. As you know, it's been, I think, almost 2 years since we restructured in that area, and I'm really happy that we did, because it's almost looking into the pandemic. We needed to make sure that we continued to prioritize that area and have structures in place and people in place to support our students during the. So I'm just going to ask one thing. If you could hold your questions till the end of the presentation to allow the folks who are presenting to get through their presentation. And without further ado, I'm going to have Mr. Kokoza kick off and introduce the folks who will be presenting.
So as Lynn outlined, the presentation will include Jamie and Kem. They put together a presentation based on that request, and then Mr. Mondella's information was added to the presentation, so he will be called up to present his information as well. So we'll start with Jamie and Kem.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. Just as the technology department, we're going to try to compress thousands of hours of work this year into a 10-minute presentation. So 7 minutes with a little bit of time at the a little bit of time left over at the end, hopefully for some Q&A. So as you can see on the agenda on the first slide, there's a little review of what multi-tiered systems of student support entails and what the purpose is, and also just a brief little description there of what we're going to cover tonight in the very next few minutes. We're going to take a look at how our RTI system addresses the needs of chronic absenteeism academic concerns, social emotional concerns, and how all that leads to or can possibly lead into the Committee on Special Education. And then, as Mr. Kokoza said, Mr. Mondella is going to talk about some of the behavioral challenges and how they're met with our systems here as well. So what are our pathways and systems of student support? We are using RTI framework as our multi-tiered systems of support. And as you've seen probably from several of my presentations, we have the tier 1, which is the whole school, and then we increase our levels of support in intensity as student need dictates. Defining RTI again, it is a response to intervention integrates assessment and intervention within a school-wide multi-level prevention system to maximize student achievement behavior problems. So we're going to go through several of those examples in a general sense. And if you want more information, I can give you more details, but I want you to know that these are actually based on real students that we've assisted this year. So the first case study is around chronic absenteeism. This year we had shift from a benchmark level of chronic absenteeism to a trajectory model. ESSA accountability data requires us to report in terms of percentages how many students have reached a 10% mark of absenteeism, which constitutes them as chronically absent. This is not a random number. This is the number that they've determined as the tipping point for where it starts to impact not only academic concerns, academic difficulties, but social, emotional, and mental health concerns as well. So we bring a list of students based on our school tools, our school tools data to the child study team. We review that list of students periodically, and we narrow down that list based on what we feel is collectively as what the students' needs are. So there's a lot of consultation with the school nurse, especially these days where a lot of our students are chronically absent, but they're chronically absent due to being quarantined. And often we have some students who are chronically absent due to some mental health placements as well. So once we get that list down as a committee, I send a letter of support home to those families. In that letter of support, you'll see you have some handouts to refer to there. It outlines the impact of absenteeism as well as some supports that are offered. So that letter will go home to those students that the team designates are in need. And then we once again review that list periodically. If the student's absenteeism has worsened, then we move on to a second stage, or I guess a higher tier of intervention, where we develop an individualized attendance plan. And that work is done with great assistance from our counseling department. We bring the parents in at times and devise a plan to assist the student getting into class. If the student has improved, thanks to some collaboration with our local Stewart's shop, we send a letter of improvement home with a little incentive of free coffee, hot chocolate, scoop of ice cream, much appreciated to the Stewart shops. And that list is monitored periodically by CST throughout the remainder of the school year. Moving on to a case study for an academic concern. So I know you have the flow chart there in front of you, so I'm not going to specifically detail all of the steps of the flow chart. But what you should just keep in mind is that the first step is a referral form that comes in. And to me, my first step is to communicate with our guidance department. We also involve CST, particularly when it's a social emotional concern. In this first case study, what we're talking about is an academic concern. So when a referral comes in, we have an initial data review and plan meeting. This is where the work of the RTI really comes in. We look at what student data has been provided by the referral, in the referral. We identify our main concerns and what's already been tried. And then we set goals for the student and brainstorm possible interventions. Once we decide on the interventions and develop a plan, I share that back with the team, contact the parent, get additional input from the parent, and then give those interventions time to work. After 2-3 weeks, depending on what the team needs, we reconvene and we look at the new data and see if those interventions have been successful. In this particular case, this was a 7th grader that I've been thinking of. When we reconvened, we found that the interventions were working very well. There was some additional information that the parent was able to bring forth. We incorporated that into the interventions as we decided what we would do to continue moving forward. This next case study is one that came in for a social emotional, mental health, and academic piece. So what we find a lot of times with our RTI referrals is that it comes across the teacher's main concern often is the academic piece, but it's never really just academics. It's always something a little bit more. For this particular student, it was concerns of anxiety, disconnection, isolation, sadness, and attendance. This student was actually a virtual student as well. So when we convened, we identified what's been done, what our main concerns are, we set goals, we brainstormed interventions. Then when I shared the plan back and connected with the parent decided immediately they didn't want their student to be remote anymore. They had decided school is the best place for their student to be learning. So that was an immediate shift to in-person instruction. Based on that, some of those interventions had to be modified. But we gave it a few weeks, we reconvened, reviewed, and lo and behold, the student began attending regularly and had a significant change in affect, participation, and engagement. And my screen's not going to the next one. There we go. So case study number 4 is an example of academic RTI to CSE and how our system, the system of RTI, response to intervention, provides that system of supports and increasing intensity that may eventually lead to a referral to special education. So a referral came in for a student who already had a 504, so already had significant interventions in place. We met as a team. In this case, the parent was actually was present in the meeting. We brainstormed a lot of the interventions that were possible, that were outside of the 504, how to increase the intensity, duration, or frequency of the interventions that were already occurring, to see what else we could do to assist this student. The team left, and we gave it 2 weeks to interventions. We came back and we looked at the data and decided we didn't really have quite enough yet because necessarily being effective, and the teachers had naturally adjusted their instruction, adjusted their level of intervention at an increased level. So we left it for a little while, for 2 weeks, 2 additional weeks, came back, and what we discussed was, or what we had decided was the interventions were actually working. However, the interventions that were working were more of a tier 3 or tier 4 level of intervention. So those needed to be amplified in order to have an effect on the student's success. We also had some additional evaluations that we were waiting for the student. There was a central auditory processing evaluation, and the student was also up for a reeval from our school psychologist. So we had all of that additional data when we reconvened for the second time. And it was at that meeting that we decided the students' needs were really best met through the Committee on Special Education. So at that time, we made a request for referral and submitted that along with all of the collected data onto the CSE office. So that brings us to Jamie.
I'm a lot short-winded, more short-winded than her, but can you, is this even working? All right. Okay, can you move to my slide by any chance? Because I hate to look, but all right. So what Ken was talking about is that after RTI process happened with that student, the Director of Support Services, Kim, put in a referral to CSE. At that point, we were on watch anyway with that student. So we were taking a look to see what tier 2 and tier 3 interventions were taking place through that process to see if that student responded. That is a request for a referral. So there's two different types of referrals that come into the CSE office. One is a request for a referral, and that comes from a staff member. It could be the school psychologist, it could be the social worker, it could be a teacher, et cetera. And when that referral comes in, I'm going to speak about that one first. The first thing we look for in my office, referral, I actually bring it right to Steve Clark, school psychologist at the junior senior high school. I'm going to speak mainly about the junior senior high school in this, but what we do is I take it to him, and then I also take it to Frank Kokoza. We sit down, and the first thing we're looking for is the student been RTI'd. Has the student gone through the RTI process? Now, I don't want to say this happens for every case. Special education is unique and individualized. There are 13 different classifications of students with disabilities. But when a student presents with academic, social, emotional, and behavioral concerns, that's what we look for. There are other classifications that I won't get into tonight. Tonight's purpose is about RTI. But what we look at is, did they go through that process? So when a referral comes in, the first thing we're looking for is what intervention services were provided to the student and how did the student respond to those interventions? We don't want special education to be the first stop for any concerns that come up for a student. And I have seen from my time, since we've got this up and running, a decrease in our referrals, which is good news. So if we notice that there's no data on that student when we go through the files, we bring that parent in, we have a meeting, and we say, really, we want this, make sure we've exhausted the gen ed supports that are available for that student before we really do that process. However, I'm going to say that that's not every case. That's for specific cases. A student may have an outside evaluation, may have a developmental evaluation, a psychiatric evaluation. That student may have medical needs, orthopedic impairments. There are many different circumstances. But if a parent comes to us with academic concerns, that's our first step. Social emotional concerns as well as behavioral. So the next is about a parent. So like I said, there's two different referrals. One I originally was talking about was a request from a referral from a staff member. The other is a parent referral. So when a parent comes in with a referral and talks about concerns that they may have, the first thing we're looking for is, did the student go through the RTI process? Okay. And the conversation happens with the parent. If we have no data on that student that they haven't gone through that process, we're encouraging that, especially because, and I'm going to get into that in the next slide, state is really pushing this as well. But I want to say again, it's not every single case. So yeah, you can go to the next one. So in 2012, New York State came out with this memorandum or guidelines, regulations, especially K through 4 specifically. That was originally what it came out with, but that every district have an RTI process, and that when you are determining if a student has a learning disability, that you have that student go through that RTI process prior to that determination. The old school methodology and what determining really learning disabilities was more on discrepancy model. And the state is really saying, okay, we're getting away from discrepancy model between their cognitive and academic abilities, and we're looking at how did they respond to gen ed supports and interventions. If you increase it, if you increase duration, if you are tracking students, how are they responding to those interventions? And if there's a slow rate of progress and that student is not progressing, that at that point, after those have been exhausted, that a referral comes to CSE. So I don't want to get into details about it, but I did put the link on there for you guys to look at. Although it's K4, the state is really looking for all students who are being considered for a learning disability go through that RTI process prior to referral. So I think that's me. So I spoke a lot more than what I thought, but just get me talking. But I'm going to actually introduce Chris Mondella, Dean of Students, and what he's going to talk about is a social media infraction and how discipline has been decided and what you do from that.
Thank you, Jamie. When we were preparing this week, we talked about trying to keep the 1 minute. Well, I practiced this afternoon, and the first run through was 347. So I said I could do better. And the second run through was 314. So we'll see how this goes. So one question that I often get with social media is how can the school become involved in something that happens off school grounds and outside of the building? And to which I respond with, once the learning environment is disrupted or a student is put into harm's way, whether that's physically, emotionally, mentally, that's when we have a responsibility to act. So the following chart outlines the process that I take when a social media infraction is presented to me. Slides are the options that I have at my discretion. It doesn't mean that they're used every single time, just kind of the options that I have available to me at all times. So box one here, generally a social media post that violates our code of conduct is presented to me generally by a student or a parent. And that's important to note because most infractions that come across my desk start in the building. And social media infractions are different because obviously they're happening on non-school devices. That's important to note because obviously during the discovery phase, no referral has been written yet. So I don't have a discipline referral to work with on investigate. After that, I ask for screenshots from the student or the parent who is presenting me this information to start investigating. So for box two here, collection of information. When possible or necessary, I offer students the opportunity to come to my office with an advocate, whether that be a student or a staff member. I really want to focus on making sure that the student is comfortable when they're in my office. Throughout every phase of the process, and especially moving forward, I'm always striving to build and maintain relationships. After this process is over, I want to still be able to talk to those students and have them feel comfortable speaking with me. Something that I've done recently to kind of along this theme is with the younger students, meeting with them outside of my office, on the couches in the main office, just to kind of lower the anxiety of having them coming to the dean's office, right? So just, in a building that's 7 through 12, I think it's age appropriate actions to be part of the process as well. Box 3, consultation. Oh, I'm sorry, I did skip a little bit here. I have to become very familiar with the social media accounts. So I've become very familiar with Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. These are things that I'm investigating all the time after something is presented to me. So after gathering that information, I bring in the appropriate people to collaborate. If it's a significant infraction, I'll bring Fran or Officer LaFond into my office to kind of run through some of the options and processes that will have to take place. Most often, though, it's Scott Smith and Steve Clark that come to the office with me, and they have a really good understanding of where the students are at, what the happening with those families that are involved. So they kind of have a good pulse of what's going on. So we kind of collaborate on what's happening with that student and try to make a decision on how to move forward. The remainder of the people listed here are people that I may contact depending on the situation, but once again, they're not involved in every single situation. It just depends on the student and that situation. Box 4, after a decision is made, we involve the parents to make sure that they're make sure that they're a part of that finalization and determination. It's important to me after it's over to make sure we're maintaining and repairing any relationships that might have been affected. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Never had a problem with not being loud enough, so I guess that's yeah. So just to wrap things up, I know this brings it back to the RTI process, but our final little quote here says that the end of the RTI process is not special education, it's when the student's problem is solved. And I think that's really important to note that at times, even though the pathway to get to special education is best when it involves level tiered, responsive, data-driven instruction, it's not the end goal. The end goal is to help students and to solve at the lowest level possible. So we'd like to open up now if you have any questions.
Thank you so much for outlining that in such a clear pathway and process. I really appreciate it. I have some questions, but some folks leaning up to the microphone. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Melissa, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I just have a,
Okay.
couple.
There's not a wait on that.
No, I was just wondering, do you have a roundabout time? Because I know when we first started this new system, there was a little bit of a lag between infraction and referral and following up with the student. Well, what's the time period? So say there's a student in need or a student to address, a referral is written. How quickly are we moving at this time?
Are you speaking about a CSC referral or RTI referral?
More along the lines of RTI yeah, thank you.
I can I can address that. We just rolled out the RTI referral for parents. It's in your handouts there. Those referrals are responded to by me first individually, maximum 48 hours later.
Great.
Maximum.
Wonderful.
And then within a week, the RTI initial data review and planning meeting is scheduled. And then the follow-up, the review meeting is generally 2 weeks unless there's a vacation or something.
Okay.
And then we reconvene at that time.
And then
So it's really a very speedy process now. It's
Yeah.
efficient with the online referral process.
All right, and then I just have one more question.
Sure.
I'm just curious, do we have any students on PINS currently?
Do we have any
students on
PINS?
PINS?
PINS has had significant changes since 2019,
Mhm.
and more specifically since the pandemic. They have, I would say, I don't want to say all the way like completely shifted gears, but it's much more PINS diversion services.
Okay.
So the image of the PINS officer even coming to your home wearing a vest, like they no longer wear vests to your home anymore.
Oh, okay.
They are much more involved in pre-referral in
Can you tell us what that acronym stands for, the PINS?
person in need of supervision.
Okay.
It's when the courts get involved.
I've heard it before, I just forgot. But
And we have had referrals to PINS in the past for attendance, behavior, several items that might come up. And we have always been, in my tenure here, especially as a facilitator for CST, we have been lauded for our data collection and the amount of data that we provide in the referral with our home visits and our parent contact and our follow-up here at school. Because it takes a great deal of information for a PINS diversion service to turn into an actual PINS case.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Wonderful job.
Do we have any other board member questions? Mary Ann?
Yeah, I wanted to make I have a couple of questions, but I wanted to make a comment first. Thank you for that presentation. Something that I noticed in it that was really, I thought great and really a comfort to see is that in each of these scenarios, once there's a referral, it immediately goes to like a group of people. So in the case of RTI, it goes to RTI problem-solving team. And in the disciplinary matter, there's consultation with an array of relevant professionals to really examine and get things in motion, but with a broad scope. And I think that that's really excellent and important. So thank you for that. A couple questions. Where does AIS fit into the tier system? That's one question.
So thank you for your first comment. As we know, student issues don't happen in isolation, so it's preposterous to think that we can solve students' issues in isolation as well. So that collaborative nature of the RTI problem-solving team really gets at that. You know, the more heads together, the better. Where AIS fits into all of this is in the RTI referral, a teacher has an opportunity to refer a student for academic RTI very easily through that referral with the submission of some data as well. And then that student can be added to an AIS class or removed from AIS if the student has made significant progress according to the data and the teacher recommendation. If a student, so AIS is considered a tier 2 level of intervention. If that is not proving to be effective, and we have opportunities to increase the intensity, frequency, or duration of that intervention.
And then, and this is just for my own understanding, but I have trouble understanding the difference between the functioning of a CST team and an RTI team. What's like an important distinction to help me understand?
I'm so glad that you asked that. That has recently been a topic of conversation in our CST. We've been exploring exactly what role our CST plays in the RTI process. There are some differing conversations, I guess. They're not different conversations, I guess they're intriguing conversations. Whether CST is a forum where teachers can bring students at a tier 1 level, or is CST something that is a committee of more, I guess, highly trained intervention specialists that are reserved for our tier 3 level interventions. Through the course of this year, we've decided as a team that CST would be involved in the RTI referrals that come in that are more than just academic. So any RTI referral that comes in, such as for social emotional, mental health, attendance, and academic, would also, I share that with the CST to get their participation, their level of interest in participating in that initial review and planning meeting.
Group of people.
It is a different group of people.
An RTI team together. Is that what? I'm sorry.
Right. No, that's fine. So the RTI and the planning committee, the RTI committee, when we meet for a student, if a referral is submitted for a student, the RTI team that meets for that student includes the classroom teachers. And I think that's one of the biggest distinctions. It includes the classroom teachers, myself, the guidance counselor associated with that student, and then any other relevant staff that has the stakeholder that would like to participate. If I bring that to CST, actually just this past week, Jamie Vera was in attendance. We also had our school social worker. We had the guidance counselor, as well as several teachers present for that meeting. CST meets regularly, weekly, and it is the same group of people who convene. It's not to say that we have not invited into that and encouraged teachers to be part of it, but the RTI process with the new referral form allows much easier access into intervention services.
Clarify too that the reason I was at the attendance of the RTI meeting she's mentioning is because I actually prefer a student. So most times special education does not go to the RTI, at least myself, I do not. But in that instance, I refer a student.
And then just my last question was, is all of this in full motion right now, or is it at some stage of?
I am proud to say that it is in full motion at this point. It's been an arduous process, but a labor of love for sure. And we decided at the beginning of this, we need to jump in with both feet now because we are in this pandemic and we're seeing a rise of students who not only have these academic difficulties, but they have difficulties associated with motivation, engagement, mental health, well-being, a whole different, I guess, area of concerns or maybe exacerbated areas of concerns than we've seen before. So we jumped in with both feet and we've had to make adjustments based on the students' needs and the teachers' needs and the parents' needs. And, so it's been through a couple of iterations as we've received feedback from the stakeholders, but I am proud to say that we are in full motion now.
And
Thanks. I've got a
thanks to the
question.
RTI committee, right? That you
Yes.
started the journey with.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and we do, I should also say that we do have, there was a committee that formulated these processes as well, and there is a standing RTI group of teachers who are committed to being in those RTI meetings as a standing member. So they will come in even if they don't know, especially if they do not know the student is not a student of their own, and they can come in as an instructional expert or with some eyes that can see the situation from the outside and offer some, or I guess maybe a fresh opinion.
Thanks. My question is and thank you for answering all these questions as we figure this out. But I think when it's laid out with a pathway, it helps us understand it better. And of course, there are things that fill in. But I'm curious, at what stage does the child or the student, at what stage are they informed that they're being referred? And at what level are they involved in the goal setting?
That's a great question too. As I said, we've been through several iterations of this and we're working on what's working best. So right now, excuse me, when we first have the initial data review and planning meeting, that is when the steps are outlined there, but we review what's already being provided for the student, what the main set goals, and then we brainstorm those interventions. And then at the end of that meeting, I leave and I write the plan, I should say, I document the plan, and I share that back with teachers, and then I contact the parents. Before that happens, one of the teachers or one of the attendees at that meeting is generally designated as the point person for that student. So in the example that, actually the one that we just had that Jamie was present at, we designated the social worker to be the point person for that student. So he was able to sit down with the student just recently and outline, and I met with the student, followed up with the student today, and we discussed what additional needs that student has and any input that that student has as far as how we can help them meet their needs and achieve their goals.
And that's generally the point person talks about that with the student. So the student doesn't need to come up through a whole panel of people and, brainstorm. They have a one-on-one situation there. Yeah. Okay.
No, a lot of the students that we get actually, anxiety is a part of the issue. So we want to make sure that we put those students in a position where they can advocate for themselves with a person with whom they feel very comfortable.
Good. Very good. Thanks. And can you, I lost the 10% attendance. So can you just clarify that metric?
Yes. So ESSA has determined that it is when a student is absent for 10% of the school year, that is the tipping point where academics and social emotional learning and mental health and well-being start to diminish. So throughout the course of a school year, if a student by the end of the school year misses 18 days, they are labeled as chronically absent. So throughout the school year, we have divided up the number of days and determined at what date and number of days absent is equivalent to 10%. So that list, for example, tomorrow, when we have our child study team meeting, I will, before the meeting, distribute the list of kids that I pull up on School Tools that have missed 10 days or more, because tomorrow, day 100, by my count anyway, day 100. And so students who have missed 10 days or more will be brought to CST.
Excellent. Thanks. One thing that I learned in this process in conversation and about this presentation coming to the meeting tonight is with you and your title Director of Student Services and the focus on RTI, which is really the 7 through 12 RTI programming. And one of the questions was, well, where does Chris fit into Student Services? And while he doesn't fit into the RTI piece, he can refer to that piece. And I think most parents, community members, I know I as a board member, consider that part of Student Services, right? And knowing that even though it's a different position, that there's working together, but there are different categories there. And I guess I would say, just as we expect teachers and every other school professional as part of the Student Services team to deliver student services. But I'm just, in terms of our language and how we're talking about this in the presentation tonight, Chris, I appreciate you coming up and giving your piece and showing how that fits together.
I was just curious how many RTI referrals you've had this year.
Yeah, I think since we have launched the referral form for teachers, we have had well, we also use the same form for ins and AIS outs. So not including those, but only including the ones that require some problem solving by the RTI committee.
RTI, yeah.
I would say that there have probably been 8.
Thank you.
I also just want to clarify, it's student support services. I also, I think Jamie is more the CSE like service, OT, PT, those are services. I
Right,
mean, you think, so
right.
it's really student support services, not student services. There's a delineation there.
Right, and that's something that I think that your average layperson doesn't make those distinctions when we talk about this, and so it's nice to see the different paths, how we run, and especially when you're dealing with students who are still forming and often have behavior, and at least we as adults and school professionals can have a predictable pathway to deal with whatever is coming. So thank you.
Yes, and as included in one of the quotes here, it's, behavior is included, and any teacher has a right to refer a student, run the RTI referral. One of the choices is behavioral concerns. Mr. Mandela can also submit a RTI referral on any student as well if he needs to have that collaborative RTI problem-solving approach. But one of the main goals of having a strong RTI program is to reduce the amount of behavioral concerns to begin with. So reducing that recidivism is really important. That would make Mr. Mandela's job a lot easier.
Nice. Very good. Well, thank you very much for all the thought and the effort and the organization from all of you and the collaboration. I appreciate it. Anything else? Yeah,
Nice job.
fantastic.
Your work is valued. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I know, Lynn, you're going to be talking a little bit about the athletic plan, and I know that we have some folks who have come in tonight. We have 2 visitors in the meeting, and Sarah, do you have a number of folks who are tuning in, just so we can check in? About 14 right now. Okay, so we're really pleased that folks are tuning in.
I'm actually talking about the athletic plan. I would prefer that we go through, because that was an update that Melissa was going to give. So we started with that, and we decided it should be a committee report. So we can go through the committee reports. That'll be on there.
Okay.
Sorry, but thank you.
No, that's okay.
It was
That's okay.
adjusted.
That's great. We can move right along. That makes me happy. We're going to go ahead then with the, so folks who are tuning in, especially about athletics, we are going to have an athletic committee report that covers that information. But on our agenda, next up, we have the Audit and Finance Committee report with Lynn King.
Good evening, everybody. I'll keep this short. The audit committee met as usual and reviewed the treasurer's report and all the accounts. Everything's in good shape so far. State aid, we all had talked about the state aid situation and our tax levy coming up. I won't repeat all of that because Mr. Varney covered that very well previously in the meeting, so we can save some time there. We also looked at the New York State Budget Handbook and the Commissioner's regulations related to budget transfers. Mr. Varney will also be going to the Policy Committee at their next meeting to give an update. As you can see, the regulations don't prescribe a limit for transfers, but really spell out the types of accounts that transfers can occur within. The Audit and Finance Committee is recommending that the current policy stay the way it is without a prescribed limit, but we've decided to add anyway a list of budget transfers to the treasurer's report. And when you look at the treasurer's report, those are already listed under adjustments anyway, but this will be easier. It's a separate page that'll list transfers. We also, Mike brought up, we had our agenda tonight. We had a placeholder for a change order, and we have some capital project change orders, and I'm going to let Mike talk about those.
Yes, so we've talked about these at Audit and Finance, and we talked about them at Buildings Basically, what you have are 6 change orders that have been, which we're looking to get approved. That means our construction manager has negotiated a final price with the contractor, and we're actually looking to do an official change to the contract. The first one is for our plumbing contractor. There's a contingency allowance left of $343. So that's a deduct that comes back to the district. Our electrical contractor, there are 2 change orders. One was for running electric power to the track from the parking lot. They had to dig a trench, and to accomplish that, and also to do some work on the switches to the lighting over the bridges. General contractor, there are 3 change orders. One is for a new ballistic door going in the cafeteria where the serving line is. An ADA operator at the front high school doors to blast the rock up at the tennis courts. Some new framing for a new high school door, and also a large contingency allowance that was not used up. That's money that comes back to the district. So the net effect to all of these contracts, when all is said and done, is about $14,000 being added to the contract. These can come up for various reasons. They could be something that was discovered, could be something that maybe should have been designed and was missed. There are various reasons why we would need to get this additional work done.
Thank you. That's on our agenda coming up to be approved. And that's my report. Thank you. Next up, we have Building and Grounds Committee report with Melissa Steele.
All right, everybody. On January 12th, we met for Buildings and Grounds. We had a Tetra Tech presentation by Pam Hamill. She's a project manager, and she reviewed the status of the building condition survey, and it discussed priority items identified for all school buildings and a timeline for the remaining steps of the survey. The district has received a draft of the building condition survey and provided comments. Tetra Tech will upload that to the NSED's vendor performance system, followed by the superintendent's final review and submission by March 1st. The capital project update, Rick, Director of Facilities, provided us a status of the update. Most of the remaining work is related to door installations, and that most likely will have to wait till the summer because of the time commitment and the materials needed. The capital project finance update, we reviewed various changes expected to the contracts. These include deduct change orders for allowances that were not used up and some add-on change orders for additional work that was needed. The net effect to the contract is an addition of about $2,300. And these changes will be submitted for approval at our February board meeting. We also discussed the McPhillips Preserve, and for those of you that have not heard, the Lake George Land Conservancy and the towns of Lake George and Queenberry, they're working on a joint project to transform the McPhillips Preserve along Bloody Pond Road into a recreational area. And that's going to consist of hiking, mountain biking trails, and an outdoor classroom area. The district is working with these groups on a potential connection for our trail systems at the elementary school to the preserve. And, just giving us many educational opportunities for our students and allowing them to have access to that area. Our next meeting is going to be on May 11th.
To Mary Ann McKenzie with our policy report.
Okay, tonight we have got 3 policies moving to second read. And we have 2 policies up for first read. The first one is duties of the district clerk, which we reviewed by our internal review process. And that one just has a minor revision for accuracy to reflect a 2 period versus 1. Policy 7420, sports and the athletic program. this was an Erie One update that came to us, and this was a minor shift of changing the Civil Rights Compliance Officer to the Title IX Coordinator as the designated individual for being responsible for the Title IX compliance and responsibilities. Pretty straightforward. One interesting question that came up on review with this policy, though, that I'll just mention, is that officials in games need to be licensed certified officials for our contests. And the question was posed, when we are possibly facing a shortage of officials, how do we as a district do that? And we consulted the experts and the options that we have. Just FYI, we have the options to reschedule or postpone a game or reclassify it as a scrimmage rather than an official contest. And additionally, we have, and that's it for what's up for tonight, we have a handful of policies on our queue. I'll speak a little bit about policy 6122, complaints and grievances by employees, since that policy received some of our attention since our last meeting. If you recall, last month we talked about the policy committee looking to settle on some language that is better and more fully articulates the meaning of this policy. And so we are currently using NYSBA's sample policy as a primary resource for securing that language, and that is under review by the policy committee electronically right now. And as well, per our committee discussion last month, we are also looking to provide some guidance and parameters in general around this policy. The committee board members devised a general outline of these parameters that really highlights our established communication protocols and pathways. And this is also under review by the full policy committee at this time. And that's it. The rest of our policies in our queue we will address ongoing, and that's the end of my report. Any questions?
Thanks so much, Mary Ann. We're going to go back to Melissa Seal now and for the athletic committee report.
So last night we had a special athletics committee meeting, and I believe all of you were able to listen. It was some great discussion. Kyle Manning, our athletic director, gave a great report, and included in that was a lot of the work that was being done, behind the scenes in order to make sure that we are doing our best for our students. And they have come up with a great plan. What we're looking at right now and what's coming before us is implementing the following sports. In 2021 winter season, the boys and girls basketball. 2021, the fall 2 season, we got volleyball. And football is pending the medical director's approval. So there's a couple of stipulations, things that when we spoke to Dr. Breen, he wanted to see put in place. The reason why we worded it in such a way is because we want this to get started hopefully before our next board meeting. So we would be voting on it with that caveat that Dr. Breen will have to give the okay. And if he does, we can move forward before our next board meeting. There was something about face masks and shielding that he wanted to put in place. And then for the spring 2021 spring season, we got unified basketball possibly moving forward. This comes with, so the precautions that we all have been putting in place in regards to masks and making sure we keep distance as much as possible during certain sports and games. It's going to be a fluid thing, because if we are above 4%, the county and capital district, they both have to be under 4% for us to continue. If we go above certain numbers, then we are going to hold off. We're not going to participate in a game if the percentages go up. So this will be something that it will be ever changing, and we'll look at numbers, we'll look at what's going on in the area before we proceed. But we really want to get, it's my recommendation that we move these sports forward. The only sport that Dr. Breen did not recommend that we move forward at this time is wrestling due to the close contact of sport. He did not sign off on that. So with the sports that I said, just stated previously, I do feel that we should move forward on this because I think our school is already doing a wonderful job at keeping students safe in day-to-day academic setting, and I think they will proceed to do so for sports as well. Now, I've received a lot of emails, and I wanted to address that I've received a lot of emails from students voicing their opinions and their feelings, and they're all the same, saying, please, you know, we want to get back to sports. I want to be able to compete last year, my senior year. I just want the students to know that I did read each and every email. I thank you for your feedback. I mean, that's the reason why we are all here in these positions. It's for you guys. So I just want you to know that I did read each of your emails, and thank you. So it is my recommendation, the recommendation of the athletic committee, that we move forward on what's being proposed tonight for our students. Do you have any questions? Comments?
I'd just like to reiterate the pride that I have are advocating for themselves and sending in letters and really speaking up for what they believe in and feel and confident doing so. So a big shout out. Thank you to students for doing that and for the adults who have encouraged them and given them that pathway to do that. So we really appreciate that. A question that I have refers back to one of the comments I thought was very important that Lynn made last night, and it has to do with folks accepting different opinions. You know, we're in such an unusual situation, and we understand that there are polarizing opinions about participation and gatherings and so forth. And when you put students in the mix who are so passionate about their sports, and you have that may have folks who are more at risk or for whatever reason may choose not to have their child participate. I just would like to get some reassurance from Lynn that we are talking with our coaches, and it's part of their training in addition to the protocols that you have reassured us that will be followed, that we have that sensitivity and we're instilling that culture to our students and our coaches that no one will be unduly pressured to be participating so that it makes an uncomfortable dynamic.
You definitely have that assurance. And I know that Mr. Kirkoza and Mr. Manny met with a coach recently just about the opposite of that, how to talk to our athletes who are not going to be able to participate in wrestling. So yes, they're having those conversations right now. I mean, it's been 2 weeks of back-to-back adjusting, looking at plans, talking to the Department of Health, getting answers and presenting. And now that we have a path to go forward, I know Mr. Manny, under the leadership of Mr. Kirkoza, he absolutely will be having those conversations with student athletes and parents.
And we also have to see what things look like with other schools as well. You know, who are we going to be competing against? Are we going to be able to have all levels of sport?
Mhm.
So, you know, that's going to be discussed moving forward.
And the coaches.
And coaches, yeah.
I mean, Mr. Manny has been in constant contact with his coaches, constant. I mean, I see almost an email or discussion or a meeting happening almost daily between him and the coaches.
Excellent.
I'm on the committee, and I'm very impressed by all the work that's been done by the school district to keep the kids safe. I think they also had concern about the referees and the umpires, so having enough referees is an issue too, just to let you know.
We have a lot of hurdles, but I
Yeah.
think, you know, it's in our best interest that we move forward with where we can move forward
Yeah.
for the sake of the kids and their socio-emotional health. All that comes into play when we talk about athletics, and it's important things to
Nice.
consider. So.
And Rosemary, did you have a comment about the liability form or the
Well, I
risk
sent
form?
that all to everyone. Lynn had responded that our attorneys have checked out the liability form that the parents have to sign and had approved that.
Mhm.
The one that I sent was in more detail, I think. And they're going to consider that for the future, I guess that's. what
Yeah,
you
it
said.
could be. Right now, I mean, we have to, thank you, Rose, for sending that. She sent a form from, I believe it was South Carolina.
South
And at this
Carolina.
point, we have moved forward with all the approvals needed and necessary. However, I said I would send that on to Gervin even as an exemplar in the future.
Sure.
Because it's just
It's pretty
a lot more detail.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Katie?
I was able to tune in virtually to the meeting last night, which I greatly appreciated. Cal did a nice job with his presentation, and he explained the team effort that went into it and all the people that were involved, and seeing the collaborative process that went into the decision-making for this recommendation. Really important piece for me to be able to support it. So I appreciated the explanation and all the work that so many people have done to come to this. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Right now, we're getting into, any other comments?
I also
Yeah.
think it's worth noting that this could be a little bit of a yo-yo for our children. Today we were at 4.1. That raised a lot of questions as to, and so it's very important that it's that rolling 7-day average, and it may cause for us and the Department of Health to tell us today for tomorrow pause. And so, again, kudos to the athletic directors and the coaches who are going to, and the transportation are going, and the parents and the students who, are going to have a little bit of this. And as it's just so important knowing we have some vacations coming up to please be really, really cognizant that we don't want to have that yo-yo effect for the students once they get going.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We are all in this together, and if we want this to continue and we want to do well, we all have to be working together, and that means still maintaining being safe outside of the school environment and outside of athletics, so that we're able to do this.
Absolutely.
And we can celebrate the hard work of developing flexible mindsets and responding to variability in our lives, which is for me as an adult, I'm staving off Alzheimer's as I do that every day. Exercising my brain. So folks, we are coming to public comment. I know we have a couple people who joined us in the audience, so you'll get a chance to speak. If you are joining us virtually, you are welcome to submit your comment or question that I will read out loud via email, info@lkgeorge.org. Is that right?
I have a question
BOE.
about that.
BOE. Say it again. BOE@lkgeorge.org.
So will you be answering those questions tonight as they come in or another time?
No, we're just going to read the comments that come out.
Okay.
If there's something just like any other time that there's a quick answer to that somebody has, just nod your head and I can recognize you and we can do a response, but we won't be getting into anything lengthy. And a reminder that we're looking for a maximum of 3 minutes for anybody sharing. So if somebody comes through with an email that's very long, I might paraphrase that, but you can, or that the whole board will get that feedback. And just a reminder for folks in the audience that we're looking for no more than 3 minutes.
And to be very respectful
Yes.
right now, because this is an emotionally charged topic, and there's a lot of different views, and some of the comments that came through weren't as respectful of everyone else's opinion. So I'm just going to say, I know you're supposed to say that, but I just want to
No,
make sure
and
that.
it's true. We always want to have respectful discourse
Decorum.
here, and but we're pleased that people are bringing their voices
Yes.
forward, and we can hear from everybody. So with that, go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll take the in-person comments first, and then I will go ahead and see if any come into the email. So come right on up.
James McCabe. I got a question. You said shared or collaborated a lot of decision making and stuff like that. The only thing I see, I'd like to know it sounds like we have one person making the decision for wrestling. Okay. So I'm just kind of curious on how did you, what is he, okay, I'll back up. What are you guys doing to say, okay, what are our options? Okay. It's not one doctor, right? If you got an illness and it's real severe, and the guy's like, hey, you're gonna die, you're gonna go check out another doctor's opinion. Okay, what I'm getting at is are we under contract with this Dr. Bream? Is that, I mean, like, how do we
Yes,
hold so much weight with one man's opinion or professional opinion? So what I'm asking is you have Warrensburg, you have Corinth, you have Luzerne. All of these medical guys decided that they would go with the wrestling program and take the precautions to move forward. I guess where I'm coming from is that I would rather take the precautions forward, and if it, you know, kids get sick in school, right? You don't shut down the school, right? You sit there, you isolate that, you take care of that situation, and everybody's moving forward, okay? What are these other sports? When someone on the basketball court gets sick, okay, so what do? You take action, you move forward. We're not even giving wrestling an opportunity because of an opinion, a professional opinion. Did you seek any other professional opinions? That's all I'm getting at. I just think that we got so much weight on this one guy. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he doesn't like wrestling. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But his opinion, and you have all these board members, okay, well, you're the expert. That's where we end with this? You owe the parents and the kids, and you talk about mental health. This carrot with all of this sports stuff, and that's got to be the worst. This carrot, you guys, you know, not you guys, but this whole system, this process has been dangling this carrot out in front of these kids. You got, I'll give you another example of where the school, I don't think we're doing the right thing. You have a football program, this guy's getting 16 kids, coach gets a workout in the morning. I mean, I don't think there's too many teams out here or coaches out here that have that pull with the connection with the kids. And that one kid got sick, done. Now, why wouldn't you just like anything else? All I'm saying is that's the way to go about moving forward with our sports. You don't want to eliminate stuff because somebody got sick. Figure out another way to go about things. That's all. I just think that we're like this, and it's easy, I think, for a board to sit there and go, hey, that was the professional opinion. Put your hands up. It's on him. It's not on us. But what have you guys done for us? Okay, you all got voted in representing the constituent. So what I'm saying is what have you guys done other than kind of like shrug your shoulders and say, hey, listen, okay, that's the professional opinion. Our hands are tied. Are you guys going out and seeking? Is there any other method to go out and sit there and say, okay, because as a board, you do have the ability to sit there and say, what, right? I would think that you'd be able to get a second opinion, no? No? You're good. Right, I understand that, but you have all these different other school districts with their medical doctors, so there has to be, I would think that there's a means that you're not subjected just to this one opinion because you're under contract with them. That just doesn't make sense when you have all these surrounding schools with the medical. I understand Queensbury isn't doing it and that, but you have these other schools. What data are they seeing that we're not seeing, or Dr. Bream's not seeing?
I guess I can answer that as a superintendent. I'm not car shopping. I have, and I have to trust in our physicians, our district's physician. And so if I disagree with the physician, I'm not going to go out and say, okay, well, I'm going to go shopping for the physician who's going to give me the answer that feels good. Because then I would never have I don't think, a quality physician here. And hang on. And I trust him to make a decision that is in the best interest for the students today, yesterday, and tomorrow. And that's what this person has done. And so I'm not going to question a gentleman who has done that consistently up until a point, and I disagree with him. I mean, conversations were had, discussions were had, and ultimately I stand by he might be wrong. But I'd rather have him be safe and wrong than have him be acquiesced to what think we want for our students and have it be a disaster. So I will answer that. Like, I'm not willing to go out and get a second opinion on top of which this decision was made so quickly that the Department of Health didn't even know it was happening. So the governor gave it to the Department of Health. They were like, oh my goodness. And so they learned as much as they could and it took a long time and a lot of discussions with a lot of people to get to this point. But right now for this recommendation, I can't move the recommendation forward to the board without two things: board approval, and I can't move it back to the board because I don't have our district physician's sign off. Even let's just say and I do not, I want to go off for the record. Let's just say we completely disagreed. Right now, I do not have the time or the resources to get another doctor because I'm not looking for another. I'm not in the business to look for another doctor. We've had this gentleman, he's made the recommendation, and we have to move forward. We are in a deadline with NYSSFA to start our athletics.
Okay, so I noticed they moved wrestling to summer.
And I'm sorry to interrupt
Yep,
you.
time to go.
Your point is very important, and I really appreciate you standing up and advocating for rest. There are lots and lots of people who agree with you and are advocating also. Hear you stand up and speak on your own behalf and on theirs is so important. I'm going to stop the back and forth just because of the
Yeah,
time,
not a
but
problem.
thank you
I
very
appreciate
much.
your time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Do we have any other comments up here? Yes, come on up.
Good evening, everybody. Board of Education, ladies and gentlemen watching at home, thank you for giving me the opportunity to stand up here. My name is Chad York. I'm coaching with Mr. Mandela, or hoping to, and I'm here because of last night's meeting. Your sense phone has been blowing up because the wrestling community is upset and the football community is scared. In all these complaints, just kind of fans here. I'm a Ben Franklin fan. I guess I'm the only one. All right. Well, Ben Franklin said, those who would give up essential liberties for temporary safety deserve neither safety nor liberty. And how that applies to what's going on now, I think, is the students and the parents of this community are provided the opportunity to make their own decision as it applies to actually attending school. Dr. Breen says in-school campus learning is good to go. However, I'm allowed to talk to my wife and my kids, and if they're not comfortable, I can say, all right, guys, you're not comfortable? I can disagree with Dr. I can reach out to Mr. Mandela, and I can say, hey, Chris, we're not cool with this. Can we work something out? He'd say, yes, absolutely, Chad. We can get a online curriculum together for you, and you can work from home. Sweet. The student athletes and the parents of the student athletes in this community aren't provided this opportunity to disagree with Dr. Breen. Does that make sense? And that's what's scaring people. We're not allowed to make the decision for ourselves based on his recommendation. If he says it's a go, then we can still sit back and have that conversation internally and say, well, I'm not comfortable with wrestling. But at least we have the opportunity to make that decision for ourselves. That sucks for the wrestlers, and there's nothing we can do about it now. I'm looking forward to the football program, and I've already reached out and I've gotten answers back from the people we've merged with, Corinth and Luzerne. They're a go for wrestling. I imagine they're going to be a go for football. Now, common sense would dictate that if we're not a go for wrestling, we're probably not going to be a go for football. We're dealing with a merger of 3 schools and 3 coaching staffs and 3 student bodies of athletes. And they're going to get the head start on Lake George. And what I'm getting at here is some of them have already been out of football for 2 or 3 years. And now we're going to be merged into another school districts who have been playing together for a year by themselves. It's going to be hard for our student athletes to get involved in the football program and our coaches to have any insider input moving forward if it's not a go for this season. Does that make sense, guys? No? All right. So that's all I'm saying. We need to, I mean, it sucks for wrestling. People want to have their input and be able to say yay or nay, regardless of what the doctor says. It should be up to the parents and the students to gauge their own level of comfortability. The same way it is to gauge our own level of comfortability with attending the school. So, any questions? Yes. No,
Jeff,
I'm
thank
looking
you.
forward to a football season, and I'm nervous about what's going to happen if we don't get to play this upcoming season with Corinth and Luzerne. It could be disastrous, because if we let them go without us, it's going to be tough to talk our kids even to go play with these guys. They're going to have the jump on us, and
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll make it.
And thank you for that. And just so that you know, on our, what we're voting on, football is on the list
Mhm.
tonight. And I understand, it is. there's
Yeah, I was on
approval,
last night. I did
but
it wrong.
it's,
I had my
it
hand up
is-
in the thing, and
Yeah.
I
There
didn't
is-
I didn't know about the email part.
Yeah.
So I'm like, nobody called on me.
Yeah,
Ooh, at home.
so, but just to let you know that that's, information that we're hoping to hear from.
Yes, no, and I'm hoping a different set of eyes on it from what people are saying behind me, because I'm kind of like a wind-up toy. They just point me in a
I
direction.
think the distinction that we've heard all along with, like not all along, but for the last week and a half is wrestling's inside, football's outside. So we're hopeful about that point taken, and we'll be
I'm running out of
proactive
time,
too.
but I am going to say, like, touching is touching. If you're going to tell me some touching is different than other touching, you're going to have to convince me that you can be like kind of dead or kind of pregnant. Like, it's touching. That's all. So it
Thank
doesn't
you.
make sense
Yeah.
to people. Like
Yes.
some touching's okay, but other touching's not.
Yeah.
If we're within 6 feet, face to face, touching each other,
Yeah.
it's the same. So, all right. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
guys,
Thank
you
you.
guys are doing
Thank
a great
you.
job. And
Thank
once
you.
again, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. All right. And Sarah, I don't see any comments that came into the email, so we're going to move right on to our school business consent agenda.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the school business consent agenda A through M.
Move approval. Okay, we have Lynn with the motion and Melissa second, and all those in favor? Oops. Lynn King, yeah, with the motion.
And I was second.
And Melissa with the second. Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carried, unanimous. All right, moving on to item number B under school business.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the following resolution. Participation in NISVA Section 2 high-risk winter sports. And that would include the 2021 winter season boys and girls volleyball, the 2021 fall 2 season volleyball and football, and that would be pending medical director's approval. 2021 spring season unified basketball.
We get a motion? So moved. Lynn King makes a motion.
Second.
Melissa makes a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And then we move on to faculty staff recognition.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District the faculty staff consent appointment item A.
Marianne and Janine seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Welcome aboard for the long-term sub-position, Anna. And we have a second section for we have Board of Education comments and discussion. Is there anything anybody wants to bring to the table?
I just want to make note that we now have a permanent commissioner of education. Betty Rosa, who was the interim commissioner, has been appointed to be the full-time state education commissioner. So I think that's going to be good for us.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was a little while in coming, so I'm
Yeah,
pleased
yeah.
for that. Yes. Anybody else? Okay. And then our second public comment period, nothing, Sarah's nodding her head. So we're going to go ahead and we have a proposed executive session can you give me the language of that? I don't have that right here. Oh, wait, yes, updating current contract negotiations. Okay, there we go. I didn't see that, sorry. And just so that everybody knows, we do not anticipate coming back into session to make any other decisions or votes going on. So after executive session, we plan to close the meeting. So all those in favor, or a motion for executive session? So Lynn King moves and Rosemarie seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carried. Well done.